Thank you for Patricia Muir, your host. And today we're going to be exploring navigating career crossroads at any age, the value of looking into your next chapter lifestyle challenges, and how you can be prepared for the next chapter. Welcome to Executive Encore. This is where we blend motivation, personal stories, and practical tips to help prepare you for a fulfilling life as you approach those crossroads of 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond. So today I am talking to Susan Letermoy in a riveting episode. Uh, Susan is a visionary co-founder at Next Chapter Lifestyle Advisors. With her remarkable 38 career legacy as a financial advisor, Susan has been at the forefront of guiding executive women through the intricate dance of retirement planning. Today, Susan not only charts her professional journey, but also dives into the core areas that she is most passionate about. Good morning, Susan. How are you?
Good morning, Patricia. I'm great. I'm so happy to be here with you today.
Thank you. Before I start to ask you questions, I just want to present a quote. It's your quote, actually, but it's something I truly believe in, and that retirement planning is not just about the money. It's about time and how we spend it. So I'm going to ask people who are watching us today or watching the video at a later date to keep that in mind as you talk about the unique challenges that executive women face in retirement. Could you share more insight on that, please?
Sure. Patricia, as you mentioned, for 38 years, I was a financial advisor, working with my clients to plan for retirement financially and to help them manage their wealth. And I thought my job was done when they had enough money for retirement. And then I started to observe that many of them, as they transitioned into retirement, were not as happy as they thought they would be. And
Mm-hmm.
I started to worry about that and think, what should I be doing? Because in a holistic perspective, which I've always tried to maintain, the money is just part of the equation. And that's
Mm-hmm.
what prompted me to then sell my wealth practice, which I did at the end of 2019, and work in this space, which is helping successful people make this transition from their careers or businesses into retirement in a fulfilling, happy, and wholesome way. And that's what led to the co-founding of Next Chapter Lifestyle Advisors, where we work with both financial advisors and their successful clients in this transition.
I think that's probably going to be an important expansion on our conversation about not only working with the individuals who are planning their lifestyle, but also with advisors who are helping, financial advisors who are helping these people to build the funds that they feel they need for retirement. So we might get into a little bit more on that. But first, I'd like to ask you, what are the distinct hurdles that high achieving women encounter as they bow out of their careers?
Yeah, so there are a number of hurdles, and I'm sad to say that many high achievers, and especially people who have been very attached to their careers, struggle the most with this transition. I've coined the acronym SIPS, SIPS, and to
Oh,
me that sums up the basic challenges that most people face. S stands for social connection, that loss of the colleagues, clients, customers, etc., that you may have worked with during your high powered career. The I stands for identity, that the business card that you carried opened doors, was the ticket to success, really. Third, the P is loss of purpose. We all know when we're working why we get up in the day. We have targets to meet, we have clients to serve, we have financial measures, etc. But somehow, when people retire, unless they replace that purpose with something else, then life feels a bit empty and purposeless. And
mm-hmm.
the last S of SIPS is structure. Again, when we're working, our days and weeks are punctuated by the 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. And somehow when people retire, many people forget what day it is even, and often claim that they sleep in too long, turn the TV on, get into sort of bad habits because of that lack of structure. So SIPs
Mhm.
is really are really the most common. But I want to add that executive women, high achievers, workaholics, people that have really been successful in their careers struggle with additional challenges.
Mm.
Usually they've had a position of status where they're highly visible and they're the go-to person. They're
Yes.
not anymore unless they do something about that. They're often powerful people where their power, where they wield control over important decisions that are being made in the organization. And that goes away.
Mhm.
Often people thrive on that sense of achievement, and many derive their self-worth from their careers, from their professions. And
Yep.
so that goes away. So people that are executives or especially high achievers, or even people that tend to be a bit on the workaholic side,
Mhm.
really struggle additionally over and above, let's say, someone who really hated their job, didn't derive any satisfaction, couldn't wait to retire. Those people
Mhm.
have an easier time with the retirement transition, but people that are highly successful executives and so on do struggle
Mhm.
additionally. So
Mhm.
that's what we see in the work that we do, especially with high achievers.
Mhm. Mhm. And how is that different, say, unfolding for a woman who's a high achiever versus a man at the executive level? What are some of the things to address the disparities there?
hmm Well, start with the bad news for women first, but then there's a lot of good news as well, which I'll also share with you. So, oftentimes there is financial inequality between men and women. Sometimes even executive women aren't paid the way that men are. So, they maybe haven't had the opportunity to build that financial base that they need to have in retirement. I think the second thing is that women may be held back in their childbearing years, where
Mhm.
they've maybe stepped away from their careers and professions, and so they've lost out. So those are impacts from a financial perspective that I think have more of an impact on women than they do on men. I
Mhm.
think the other thing is that we have sometimes women have a different mindset about this. And one of the, I'd say, negative mindsets is aging. I'm old. And
Mhm.
somehow when we have gray hair or we're, a few wrinkles, that we're perceived as kind of over the hill. And we have to change that mindset because men don't struggle with that. A
Yeah.
man with gray hair looks distinguished, right?
Mhm.
So that's another factor that I think works against women. Oftentimes, women find themselves alone at this stage of life. We know that there's a high incidence of gray divorce. People over the age of 50 getting
Oh.
divorced.
Mm.
So a number of women find themselves on their own. We also know that men die earlier than women, and so some women end up as widows. So they may have never contemplated the idea that they're going to head into retirement or spend their retirement years on their own.
Mhm.
So that's certainly an issue. So I don't want to be all negative about it because I think there's some wonderful advantages that women have as they head into retirement. And I think the first thing that stands out in my mind is the social connectivity. We tend to be, as women, more socially connected, have a wider group of friends, and often our friends are not just our work colleagues.
Mhm.
Whereas for many men, I think their friends are their buddies that they golf with or they work with, and so on. It's a more limited, let's say, cohort of social connection that men have than women have. I also think that women are more adaptable. We've had to be adaptable. I know as a mother, a wife, a career woman, and so on, that I had to adapt to many changes.
Yeah.
And so this is something else in this transition that women have this advantage of being more adaptable. And I think
Mhm.
women tend to get adventurous in at this stage of life. I know a number of women that have embarked on new activities, new hobbies, new careers, etc., have ventured out into completely different areas than they enjoyed during their career. So I think
Mhm.
women do have some distinct advantages that
Mhm.
maybe offset some of the challenges that women face.
Yeah. Yeah, the definite advantage is that we have as women, especially if we have built our career, sometimes even moved from one career to the other, or at least elevated our careers, is that we've gone through something like this before, right?
Yes.
And we may have had a pause in our career. We may have had a time when we did rethink where we wanted to go from that. So we can always reflect on those times and what we learned from those times to help us through this transition as well.
Mhm.
Um, I'd like to speak a little bit more about the status because, yes, definitely. Just on LinkedIn. You go on LinkedIn, you've got a profile there that's got a very impressive status. And I'm talking about all women who will be watching this. They have an impressive title, even if they've given the title themselves. And now they have to rework that in some way so that they still get the source of satisfaction that they get from status. Uh, could we talk a little more about that? How would we, because this could be a long time that we're looking at, could be 20, 30 years in this new phase where we will be progressing through that phase as well. Um, how do we prepare ourselves for our changing status?
Mhm. Well, you make a really good point about the change in status. And I think the first thing we need to do is retire the word retirement. This is
Exactly. I can't agree more.
this is no longer, sit in your rocking chair and wait 5 years until you pass away. No. As you
Mhm.
mentioned, Patricia, this is another 20 to 30 year. This could be as much of it as a third of your lifetime.
Yep.
So it's the time to rewire, not retire.
Mhm.
Rewire. And that rewirement could be something related to the work that you previously did, which is exactly what I did. My experience and knowledge working with people as they transitioned into retirement was really the ammunition, was the springboard that told me that what I wanted to do in my rewirement was to work with people going through this transition. And thus that led to the founding of Next Chapter Lifestyle Advisors. And that's why we call it Next Chapter and not retirement, even though
Mhm.
that we haven't got a better word in the English language yet for this new phase of life. People are,
Yeah.
I think rewirement sums it up about the best. So maybe status isn't as important anymore, and that's something we have to get our
Mm.
heads around. Is the title, the VP or executive um, titles that we share when we're in our career. Maybe that isn't as important anymore, and that we need to look at different ways that we find fulfillment and satisfaction in life. For some
Yes.
people, it is important, and maybe they go on as many of my, when I did the director's training and sat on a corporate board, many women want to keep that status and control and therefore join board positions, corporate boards. Other
Mhm.
people say, I want to work in the not for profit sector. But
Mhm.
somehow either we replace that status or we move away from it, and those things become less important than at this phase of life.
Mhm. Now, an important point about being on a board. Many of these women have had such high profile positions in their business or as executives that they may not have had time to volunteer before. And I would imagine it's very difficult to just put your hand up when you're retired and say, now I want to be on a board. So I would imagine some preparation would be required, like to start volunteering with a particular organization and one that fits your mission or your passion, right? And
Hmm.
so that you're prepared to put your hand up to be on a board later. Would you
Right.
have you seen that happen in actual life
Yes.
planning?
Absolutely. When I did the ICD.D designation, which is one of the director training programs
Mm,
in Canada today, there were a lot of people, men and women, who aspired to be on big corporate boards, a bank board or an insurance company or an energy company. And those positions are few and far between. It
mhm,
is helping now that more and more women are achieving board positions at that level, which are paid positions. But I absolutely think that you have to have training to be a good director today, and also that you bring something from your past experience, whether you know the industry inside out, or whether you're a financial person and you can add something on the financial side or the strategy side or marketing side, whatever it may be. But I have a friend who has been a very successful board director. And what she claims is that her life isn't her own now, because whenever there's an issue, a crisis, some kind of news event, she's on call with the corporate board. So
Mhm.
it isn't necessarily the ideal for
Mhm.
everyone, although I think it can be a great gig for some.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
certainly, I think a lot of not-for-profit boards are crying out for experienced and talented people, again, to bring those same skills, those organizational skills, leadership, financial, marketing, customer service, all whatever the background is that you've had, can be brought to bear in the not-for-profit sector if volunteering is something that you want to do in this stage
Mhm.
of life. I know it's an assumed thing that,
I
oh, you're
know.
retired, you can volunteer. I
Volunteer.
don't necessarily buy it. It's not for everybody.
Yeah.
But for those that want to volunteer, I think there are many organizations. The key is to find the area that you're passionate about, not just to go on some board because someone asks you, but what is it you truly care about and that you can
Mhm.
actually help to move the dial, whether it be, child welfare, environmental, save the rainforest,
Mhm.
a cultural board, an arts board, a theater board, etc. It's important to figure out where your passion is, and then put your hand up, and maybe start, as you mentioned, in more of a committee role, and then eventually take on a board seat. But
Yes,
there are
'cause
lots of other aspects to rewirement than
yeah.
volunteering and board
Yeah.
work.
Yeah, I agree with you. I know a lot of people say, well, I can just volunteer without any thought about what kind of volunteer work and also about whether that will fulfill that particular source of satisfaction that you would derive from work, and now you don't. But also the value piece, like, we still want to feel valued, so we've got to find a way to make sure that's in our lifestyle as well,
Mhm.
not just giving all the time. So moving from status, are there other actionable tips that you could provide for thriving post-career?
Yes, definitely. I think the first thing is to not leave this next chapter to chance. Like any good journey voyage that we go on, it requires a plan, a bit of an itinerary, let's say, to use a
Mhm.
travel analogy. So
Mhm.
number one is to not leave it till the last minute, or to wait and regret that you retired, which is quite often what happens. People wake up the next day after the retirement party and say, uh-oh,
Yeah.
what did I just
No.
do?
Yeah,
So
now
important
what?
to have a plan. So that would
Yeah.
be tip number one. Tip number two would be to work with a coach. And I'm sure many of the executive women listening have worked with executive business coaches. Maybe if they're athletic or they want to be physically fit, they work with personal trainers. So having a retirement planning coach, I think, is equally important as having coaches in other facets of life. Let's face it, everyone who's super successful has had coaching. So I think that a lot of the pitfalls that we talked about earlier can be avoided if people work with a professional in this area.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I think the third tip I would say is to adopt the right philosophy of life. And to that end, that touches on the first book that I wrote way back in 2014, The Rich Life, Managing Wealth and Purpose. So it's one thing, getting back to your opening quote, it's one thing to have the money to retire, but it's also important to have the purpose. And so in the book, I talk about what is a rich life. And to me, what you can synthesize it down into 3 points. Live well, very important, number one. Two, give back. And three, leave a legacy. How do you want to be remembered? So we
Mhm.
distill that down. Then
Mhm.
to help people with actually thriving in their next chapter, it's good to have a template or a model to follow. And the model that we've developed at Next Chapter Lifestyle Advisors is called your happiness portfolio. And the happiness portfolio consists of 8 areas of life, all non-financial. And it's important to do an examination of each of these 8 areas in your own life, figure out what's important to you in each area, and then build your plan around that. And just like a financial portfolio, the happiness portfolio should have some diversification. It's not just endless golf and travel. And it should have balance so that you're not, as you alluded to earlier, giving your all and feeling like you're working harder than ever before, but having a balance of these 8 areas and really having a life portfolio that brings you satisfaction in those 8 areas.
That sounds like such a valuable program. And just to go back to our earlier conversation, this is not a do it yourself. If you do it yourself and just allow things to happen, it's not going to necessarily be intentional, and you're not going to get the same results, and you're not going to get results quicker. But if you work with a coach, you will get there much quicker and with much ease rather than trying to do it yourself. So,
Yes. So what happens so often when people don't have a plan is everyone around them comes up with a plan for them.
oh yeah,
Your children might say, "Well, now you can babysit." The volunteer organization that you gave a few hours a week says, "Well, now you can be our executive director and work full
yeah,
time again." And
yeah.
so things crowd in on your
Oh,
time,
yeah.
and pretty soon you're not living the life you want. It's
Yeah.
everyone else's idea of what you should be doing.
That's right. Heard so many stories of that. Like one where a woman looked after her neighbors, brought packages in, and when they were on vacation, did things like mow their lawn, shovel their snow. And one situation, she had a neighbor come back and say, "Looks like it didn't snow at all while we were away. Why they were on this beautiful winter holiday in the sun." And she says, "That's because I shuffled it." So she changed it a little. She no longer did it voluntarily as a good neighbor. She turned it into a business. She says, "I'm going to start charging now." Well, she lost some of her customers, but she gained a lot of customers who were willing to give her the value that she was providing. So
Mhm.
that's a great segue into what I call every moment matters. Can you please share a pivotal moment in your life where you recognized what fulfillment or what was really important to you, what that looked like?
I think at this stage of life, fulfillment for me is finding that balance, having the balance between what I do professionally and having
Mm.
time for leisure activities. I'm taking up Pilates and pickleball, and I've started to play golf. So there's a balance there and now I have 2 grandsons, and so that aspect of having family and being a grandmother is part of the picture as well. So I think for me, fulfillment is really about having that right balance between all these facets of life. Of
Mhm.
course, good health is at the
Mhm.
underpinning of all of it. And so
Yeah,
we obviously have to invest time and energy and sometimes money into maintaining health. But I think fulfillment is balance.
mm, okay, good. All right. So, what would you like our listeners to do as a call to action, and how can they contact you?
Okay. Well, I think the first thing is if you're more of a do it yourselfer and you don't want to work with a coach, then we have a couple of books. My partner, Marianne Osher, wrote the book, Your Happiness Portfolio for Retirement. It's Not About the Money. And my book pertaining to retirement is 9 Steps to a Rich Life Retirement. Live well, give back, leave a legacy. And
Good.
both our books are available on Amazon in print, in Kindle, and in audio version, so easy to access.
Mhm.
I would say that if you are the type that you need to think about working with a coach or someone to bounce ideas off anyway, you can contact us. You can contact me, Susan at nextchapterlifestyleadvisors.com. I'm also on LinkedIn, and our website, nextchapterlifestyleadvisors.com, is also a good place to start, and you can contact us through there.
Okay.
But I think definitely having a plan and working with a coach are the best practices. And I could go on and on, but we have some wonderful success stories of people that we've worked with. and how they've really just blossomed in their next chapter.
That's great to hear. Okay, and I will certainly put all that information into the show notes. The That information will also be included in Sunday's newsletter, my newsletter coming up this Sunday, where I will focus on some of the takeaways from our video today. Is there anything else, Susan, before we close?
I just want to say, Patricia, it's really a pleasure to speak with someone else, a woman who is successful, has been successful, who is dedicated to this area of helping other women be successful in their next chapter. So it's lovely to find birds of a feather in this
Yes.
world.
Yes. Thank you so much for that. And I feel the same about meeting you. So I'd like to ask our listeners to please join me live or on replays as I share conversations with inspiring women like Susan and other thought leaders. I'm sure that you agree that this episode is a much watch for any executive woman poised to orchestrate her own encore. So that's what I call it, the executive encore. My call to action is to please give us a thumbs up on the video, comment, put your comments in LinkedIn, and please, very important, share with your friends and family and colleagues who would benefit from listening to Susan's insights on this particular topic. If you're listening to the podcast, please provide your rating and comments. We all know now that ratings and comments will help to spread the word, and this is such important information. Also join me on May 2nd, where I interview Susan's business partner, Marianne Oischer, and the co-founder of Next Chapter Life Advisors. She'll be joining me for a conversation about flying solo. So if you are single, and most of us will find ourselves single at some point in our life, this is an important conversation as well. I want to thank Susan and Marianne for joining me on these conversations. It's so important for executive women. We explore the secrets to personal and professional fulfillment and dive into the joys of finding fulfillment as we live longer, no matter what your age, your gender, or perspective on well-being and fulfillment. I invite you to be a guest on my show as well. Let's connect and inspire together. So visit my website at patriciamuir.com. So easy to visit my website. Read the Encore Weekly blog there, and you can also read it on LinkedIn. Subscribe to my newsletter. Susan's insights and highlighted will be highlighted in the Sunday newsletter, April 21st. So please sign up as quickly as possible. I often refer to my guests' insights because our ability to share and receive the wisdom from other people is crucial to navigating the chaos and the unexpected detours and stabilizing our life to focus on our own fulfillment and self-actualization. Thank you and have a wonderful day.